President Tinubu appoints Thaddeus Attah acting chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service. Court of Appeal sacks PDP's Ndudi Elumelu, upholds LP's Ngozi Okolie as winner of rep seats in Delta State. And ASU rejects federal government's new funding plan for tertiary institutions. And let's check out stories from outside Nigeria. Mali has cancelled its Independence Day celebrations and ordered funds allocated to festivities be diverted to victims of attacks. In Zimbabwe, President Emerson Mnangagwa has sworn in 3 more deputy ministers. Tonight on Politics HQ, we will be looking at the recent pronouncement by the National Assembly Elections Petition Tribunal in Lagos State, ordering the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) to conduct a supplementary election in Eti-Osa Federal Constituency, notifying Labour Party candidates' victory. Later on, we will also discuss the inauguration of the 63rd Independence Anniversary Celebration Committee right here in Nigeria by the federal government. I'm Kofi Bartels. Politics HQ starts now. Welcome. Months after the Labour Party's candidate Thaddeus Attah won the election to represent Eti-Osa Federal Constituency, one of the wealthiest constituencies in the nation, the tribunal has ordered a rerun of that election. We broke that news yesterday. Attah was a surprise winner, you can call it, of the House of Representatives election in Eti-Osa, as Nigerians hailed the process that led to his victory, especially against political parties and especially against candidates who were deemed more popular. 2 of them in particular. Well, now with fresh elections set to be held, the parties involved and the candidates involved have begun strategizing to make the most of their second opportunity. One of them called it a miracle, and is right here with us on Politics HQ on News Central TV. Olubankole Wellington, popularly known as Banky W, Nigerian musician, actor, pastor, politician, entrepreneur. He was a candidate of the People's Democratic Party during the elections and is joining us tonight on Politics HQ to discuss the coming supplementary elections, the tribunal's decision, and what he expects from his people this time around. Pastor Banky W, welcome.
Good evening, sir. Mr. Bartels, nice to see you again. How have you been?
Yes, I'm very good. I never thought we would have another opportunity to discuss your election after the last time, but you described it as a miracle. You're welcome. Now, your first public response to your election loss was a message you shared in church. I'm guessing it's Waterbrook's church, where you said, and I quote, "For anyone who's ever suffered a loss, a disappointment, or a situation where things just didn't work out how you hoped," you said, "faith after a fall is for you, for me, for all of us." I'm sure you remember that message. Would you say your faith played a role in how things have played out at the tribunal?
Well, I am a man of faith, and that's the truth. I believe in God. I believe in the spiritual. My faith is what has seen me through some of the toughest times of my life, my challenges with my health, my family life, my business, everything that I am today, I owe completely to the grace of God and just his grace that has been abundant and sufficient for me. So there's no way for me to separate the journey that I'm on from the faith that I have in God and in the situation that he's placed me in. Now, as far as this tribunal ruling is concerned, to be honest with you, I was probably surprised as well that we were going to head back for a rerun. But I think, the principle is that every vote deserves to be counted and every voice deserves to be heard. And the rules in our laws must be obeyed. And I think, this rerun is a testament to that. Our democracy is still a work in progress. We don't have it where we want it to be. The country is still a far way off from the kind of Nigeria that we want. But I think every little step in the right direction is only a positive thing. And I recall during the elections when there were almost 30,000 people in Eti-Osa who were prevented from voting. In some places, INEC just didn't show up. In some places, people would have been there from 6 a.m. till 5, 6 p.m. and had given up and gone home, and then the representatives from the electoral body would come in after that. In some places, they actually showed up and they didn't have House of Reps ballots. In some places, there was violence. In some places, there was a bit of intimidation and voter suppression. And this is the same constituency where NSARS happened. So, the constituency has been through a lot. And I recall, at the end of those elections, when hundreds upon hundreds of people gathered at the collation center, and I was right there with them, and they were protesting that, no, we must be allowed to participate in these elections. It's not fair. This is our right. And people were so energized. And to have that taken away from them just didn't feel right. And even in the midst of that, I realized that not everybody was going to vote for me, but it didn't matter. The point is that people should be given the right to participate in their elections. And if this is the one place that we have a chance to get that right, then let's start from here and let's build from here. And so, it is a miracle. It is something that, it's still an uphill challenge. It's still a difficult thing for a candidate like myself, who's very much the underdog, believe it or not. But still, it's a fighting chance. All right. And I am a person, and I believe in, if you're given a chance, you seize it and you do the best you can do. You represent yourself, you put yourself forward, and you trust in the will of God and the will of the people. And whatever that results in is completely fine. The goal is, can we have as free and fair and transparent a process as possible and give people the opportunity to play a part in the elections as is their right? And if we do that, whatever the results are, it's okay.
Quite interesting. Let's talk about your petition for a moment here. Did your petition, include issues that led to the order for a supplementary election in the 33 polling units, if it's more? What were the issues raised in your petition, and what were your prayers, and what did the tribunal say about them?
So the petition that we put, actually the first petitioner was the party, the People's Democratic Party, and some of the leaders in the state, because to be honest with you, the kind of campaign that I ran, with all of the work that we did and all of the places that we went, I say this humbly, and I don't say this to brag, but I know how hard we worked, not just in this campaign, but really over the last few years and over the time of my being relevant as an entrepreneur, in business and entertainment, in media and marketing, just the work and the community service and the campaigning that we did. I honestly don't know that anybody else put in that level of effort. So by the time the results came out, to be honest with you, I was completely drained. I was drained financially. A couple of SANs reached out and said, hey, there's a case for an inconclusive election. There are even questions around, the eligibility of certain candidates and whether they were even members of a party. And, there were all these things that were coming up. But they were telling me things like, 200 million, 150 million to pay for the case. And at that point, I was like, you know what, God, this thing, I'm spent out. I've put myself forward. It didn't work out, and I'm ready to embrace that. And I think it was at that point that a few leaders in the party got together and said, you've worked too hard. We've all worked too hard to just ignore the fact that this election actually was inconclusive. It's not over. You still have 30,000 people who have not voted, and whether they vote, the point was whether they vote for us or not is still okay, as long as they're given a chance. And so, they kind of came together, and, I, eventually got on board, and, they put me as the second petitioner in the case, but it really was driven by a couple of just fantastic people who have integrity and who believe in our shared vision and values for Eti-Osa constituency and for Nigeria. And so, yes, they pushed for this inconclusive election. I know also that in the other petition that was filed, there are a lot of questions around the eligibility of the candidate and whether, a person was just kind of riding the Peter Obi wave and tsunami that took over the nation, and whether, that candidate was actually legal in the first place. But it's not my role or job to look down on anybody or cast aspersions on anybody. My thing is, let us have a free, fair election and give people the right to have their say. And whatever way that works out, if it doesn't work out for me, my life, to the glory of God, my life doesn't depend on getting into office. I'm only doing this because I have a deep conviction to serve. I have a deep conviction to be a stepping stone for the young people of my constituency and for Nigeria. And if that doesn't work out, I already know what I'm going to do in business, in industry.
Banky W, what you're saying, Mr. Wellington, is that your petition didn't question, and the PDP's petition didn't question the qualification or eligibility of Thaddeus Attah of the Labour Party. You focused on the disenfranchisement of your voters, and of course, flouting of the Electoral Act, as it were.
Yeah, so, from my perspective, that was the reason why I agreed to go along with it. But I think as to the specifics of what the petition said, I think if you speak to, I can maybe link you with one or two people in the party who really drove this. But, for me, it boils down to a deep conviction that a democracy is only as good as the people that are involved in it. And if we say that we are here to reform governance and to reform leadership, then things like our elections, we have to fight for those to be free and fair. We have to fight for everybody to have a say. We have to fight for the right thing to be done. I mean, it's a bit insane to me that INEC is supposed to be an independent institution, but in Eti-Osa, the INEC office is inside the local government office, which is filled with members of the ruling party. So even if they are trying to be independent, that's a lot of pressure for them to be under. So I think these are the things that we have to look at going forward. How do we ensure that our institutions who are meant to protect our democracy are protected? How do we ensure that they're insulated from any kind of influence? How do we ensure that if we say we're having elections, we give every citizen who has gone through the headache and the pain to go out and do, register to vote, do their biometrics, queue up to get their card, queue up on election day, stand in the sun, the rain, under a canopy, outside of a canopy, find a chair, don't find a chair. And then you tell that person that they can't vote. I don't think that it's right. I don't think that that's the kind of country that we want to be. And so let's go back. Yes, it's a slim chance. I mean, like I said, I'm the underdog, right? You have the one candidate that's the candidate of the ruling party.
Well, you came second. You came second.
Which for me, is a testimony in and of itself, because I'm going against the ruling party and the incumbent who's been there 4 years and has the wealth of the system behind him. And then I was going against the wave that swept the notion, which is also ironic in itself because, one of the people that recruited me into the PDP is my friend and brother, GRV, Badebo Roads Bible. Still my friend, he's still my brother. We happen to be in different political platforms. But when I was still weighing whether I wanted to come back into office, into running for office, Badebo took me to lunch, sat me down and said, listen, there's an opportunity for us. We need young people. We need fresh minds. Let's go into this thing together. So in coming to the PDP, there are like minds still till today, who, I see face to face with. But at the end of the day, there were people who I was still expecting to be there that left, based on how the political scene played out. And, I don't say it with any complaints. I'm blessed with some fantastic people in the PDP. But the point is that there is no perfect party. There's no perfect church or mosque or company or family. There's no family where you will not have a couple of people inside that have small brain touch. And that's the truth. There's no collection of people that is good and a collection of people that
Mr. Wellington, yes, sorry to interject, but I want to ask you quickly, before I move on to the next set of questions. As regards the 33, we take it 33 polling units,
it will be between 32 and 45. We're waiting for clarity from the judgment.
Because your counterpart, Representative Olubankole, since the certificate has been withdrawn from the winner, I think he is the predecessor now. Anyway, he said 42. So we hope to get that clarity. But
we'll get clarity from the tribunal's judgment, I'm sure, in the next day.
Okay. Yeah. Have you been given a copy of that judgment? As the PDP lawyer has been?
We're still waiting for it. We're hopeful that the tribunal will release that to us, because when you're in the legal process, they just kind of read it out, but they don't go through the specifics of all the polling units. But we're hopeful that in the next day or two we'll get a copy of the
Because
judgment.
that's also another touchy issue in this whole tribunal process. Were any of the legal teams, especially yours, able to prove that polling unit by polling unit in all of those 33 or 45, that there were irregularities and people were denied the opportunity to vote one by one?
So what people need to understand, people who are not in the campaign teams, people who don't really see behind the scenes, don't understand that running for office is not just about your messaging and kind of the media you do and the work you do online or on TV or on radio. It's also a logistical operation, which means that for every polling unit, you need multiple agents, you need monitors, you need canvassers, you need observers, you need to have a whole matrix. We had a matrix of over 3,000 people covering the elections. And things like this are critical because if you don't have people on ground to fill out the incident forms, to sign, to make sure that, yes, elections did hold here or they did not, and, getting the required signature and the required documentary evidence, when all is said and done, you'll have nothing to show, and it'll just be your word against his or hers. And so, luckily for us, and I think the rest of the parties also did a fairly good job. We staffed the entire 725 polling units in Eti-Osa. We had multiple people on ground. I mean, and our agents, I have to tip my hat. We have the greatest volunteers on earth. They went through hell and high water to stand there for us. In some places, they faced, violence and threats of violence, intimidation, but our people stood strong. They stood tall, and they had all of the evidence that they needed to show.
Okay, so you presented evidence polling unit by polling unit in court?
Absolutely, yes.
Why I'm asking this is because for the presidential election petitions, the judges refused to cancel elections or refused to grant the prayers of the petitions, namely PDP and LP, because they cited Wiki versus Peterside 2016, Supreme Court of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, where the judges of the highest court in the land said a petitioner complaining of non-compliance with the Electoral Act must prove polling unit by polling unit, ward by ward. The standard of proof is on the balance of probabilities. He must show figures, with figures that the adverse party was credited as a result of non-compliance. So I'm wondering if you're able to show that word by word.
I think that ruling is correct, is accurate, but it's much harder to prove, on a presidential level. So I can speak for the work that we did in Eti-Osa because we went into this election completely prepared for any and all scenarios. And that's why we were staffed so well. But, at the presidential level, now you're talking about a couple 100,000 polling units spread out across the country. And so, I was not privy to be a part of, any council as far as the legal petitions were conducted at that level. But at our level, we did a fantastic job. And I have to again shout out to the Banky Wellington organization volunteers. They were completely amazing. The best young people I have ever come across. I'm grateful that I have this number of people that believe the same things that I believe and are willing to stand with me.
Interesting. We'll keep our eyes on that space because this polling unit by polling unit, word by word thing is something that is still up in the air as far as legal analysis is concerned. But we look forward to the rest of the campaigns and to the elections holding, and we'll keep our eyes on that space. Olubankole, Wellington, PDP
Can I just say one more thing?
Yes.
Sorry, Mr. Bartels. I want to close on this point. I think one thing that I've learned is that leadership requires the resilience and the courage to stand for what you believe in, even if you have to stand alone. And I think that that's what we have displayed. We've stood, we've been resilient, we've had courage, we've come up against all and every odds that should be insurmountable, and yet here we are at the cusp of making history against machinery and funding and things that are way beyond our ability. But at this point, it's no longer about me. It's about the people of Eti-Osa and the grace of God.
All right.
If we don't win, then it is the will of God. But if we do win, then it is the hand of God and the hand of the people that will
All
make
right.
it possible.
All right. Thank you
God
so
bless
much for your time.
you.
That was getting a bit closer to campaign, but I think you were able to drag yourself back this way.
Thank you, sir.
Olubankole Wellington is a candidate of the People's Democratic Party for the Eti-Osa Federal Constituency supplementary election in a matter of days. Thank you for your time, sir.
Bless you.